southeast Central Europe, in the northern Balkan Peninsula, is the country of Romania. It borders the Black Sea, Bulgaria, Serbia, Hungary, Moldova, and the Ukraine. The Carpathian and Transylvanian mountains divide it. The Romanian people derive their name from the ancient Romans. Romania is famous for its architecture, art, style, and culture. Back in the late 1800s, Bucharest, its capital, was often referred to as the Little Paris, with its meandering waterways, beautiful gardens, and ornate buildings. Palace Sinaia was the palace of King Michael I, the last king of Romania. In 1947, King Michael was driven from Romania when pro-communist forces took full power. His castle shows the beautiful designs that were common in the mountainous areas of Montania and Transylvania. The Orthodox Church is the national church of Romania, but like many other countries of Europe, Romania is quickly becoming secular. In the cities, people are crowded into these block of flats, as they are called. Under communism, it was the design of the party that the people should live in the same way, with the same income and the same social status. Out in the country, life is pretty much like it was years ago. Life is hard and attended by many difficulties. In the Transylvanian mountains is the Bran Castle, the legendary home of Count Dracula. Truth is, Count Dracula was a national folk hero who became famous for his bloody attacks upon the invading Turks during the time of the Ottoman Empire. Toward the end of his life, it is said that he became a prisoner in the tower of his own castle. But the legends of Dracula are not as real to many as the facts about this man, Nicolae Ceausescu, the former dictator of Romania. The 1949 date was recognized as a starting point for the rule of the Communist Party, and in 1965 Ceausescu was elected the head of that party. Soon he was rubbing shoulders with world leaders, mostly from countries such as North Korea, Iran, Libya, Russia, while giving lip service to the Americans. Elena and Nicolae Ceausescu successfully established a totalitarian personality cult. When Ceausescu entered the podium, it was not unusual to have him go into tirades that would last for hours. In turn, he would be greeted with hours of the audience clapping and shouting his name. At one event, it was recorded that his name was chanted some 467 times, and the audience cheered him for over 3 hours and 22 minutes while he stood listening in a trance-like state. He commanded the destruction of many of the historic buildings in Bucharest to start the building of his new empire, the last being the Grand Ceausescu Palace, later to be named the People's Palace.
It's called People's Palace, and it's a fruit of the sick imagination of the last communist dictator in our country. Hundreds of thousands of people work here in slave labor. You were forced to come here. They were coming to your place and giving you a piece of paper, telling you with no other explanation that you are forced to come for 6 months, 9 months, or 1.5 years to work in this house here.
The grand marble pillars and flooring testifies of a man who was bent on fulfilling the glories of his sick imagination. The palace was not only used for his own personal residence, but for banquets, dances, as well as the operations of his government. No one dare question the authority of this man, and if they did, their fate would fall into the hands of the secret police. The most feared place one could end up was inside of a Romanian prison, a place where the door would be forever shut. While Ceausescu lived lavishly, the people stood in line for hours hoping for some bread or simple staples. People started to become more restless and unhappy. Yet, whenever Ceausescu visited a shop to see how his nation was faring, the secret police always had an abundance of food ready to greet him. In meeting with the common people, he would often assure them better times were coming. These men do not look too convinced. On December 16, 1989, riots broke out in Timișoara. Police opened fire, killing scores of people. It was becoming obvious that the people were becoming fed up with the rule of Ceausescu and the Communist Party. On the cold, gray day of December 21st, 1989, Ceausescu held a rally that would lead to his downfall. While he tried to reason with the people, they became more and more restless, unconvinced that anything would change. Soon they started to shout, "Down with the dictator! Down with the dictator!" A bomb exploded on one side of Bucharest, and then the military was called out. Crowds took to the streets, and trainloads of people came from other cities to fight the revolution. Hesitantly, the military tried to take control, but many of them were not convinced that they should aid the government. Ceausescu tried to escape in a helicopter, but even that failed as the pilot downed the craft, and Ceausescu and his wife Elena were arrested, tried, and then executed. The last thing anyone would imagine was that somehow God would be able to reach down to the most feared place during the times of communism, the prisons of Romania. The story you are about to hear is true and amazing. Recently, I visited Romania. This was my 20th visit since the fall of communism. Meet Manta, the Director of Humanitarian Prison Services, greeted me at the airport. I want to take you on a journey of amazing events that happened from the year 1991 and onward. The day started early, and as always, the streets of Bucharest are full of hustle and bustle. In the spring of 1991, we came to this old Romanian Union office. It was closed because it was a Sunday morning, and we were talking with the lady that was cleaning the building. And it was by divine providence that there happened to be one man inside who heard us speaking English and came out. His name was Lucian Cristescu. We ended up at this block of flats, or what we call in America an apartment house complex, and Lucian Cristescu took us up to his apartment and shared with us what it was like during the Communist Revolution, how they had to lay on the floor for 2 days being careful to stay away from the windows because of the flying bullets outside. Little did I know that this first meeting with Lucian was going to develop into a very long-lasting relationship that would have many amazing things happen here in Romania. In the next year, 1992, I returned back to Romania and met with Lucian Cristescu. He shared with me something amazing that had just happened.
I remember about Elena Angel. Her story began right after the revolution, when her husband suddenly died. Heart attack. He was about 42 years. The poor lady with her 2 children, they were in the high school, she wanted to die. She went in such a deep depression that it seemed that nobody could help her to get out. Somebody, I cannot remember who, led her to the church. And Jesus Christ was the only hope and recovery to her. She was baptized, her children were supportive, they went together to the church. She was living in Brașov, in a nice city in Transylvania. She was trying to find out a way in order to cope fully with her depression, because even if she had no hope, the burden was pulling her back, and she decided to do something absolutely unusual. She was decided to go and to share her comfort to the prisoners, to those who are behind the bars. But this idea was totally crazy, because in that times a civilian entering the prison system, which was in a communist way, that was something secret, it was impossible. And Elena was praying and said, God, Lord, do something for me and for them, and let me in. She went to the prison, but nobody let her in. But she wanted to be there. No rights to reach the prisoners. The last words of the guard to Elena were, "Woman, go away from here and nowhere come back." And while trying to withhold her tears, she said, "I know now, I will go to Bucharest." To Bucharest, she knew nobody there. She was a simple member, new baptized member in a faraway city of Brașov, but she said, I don't need anybody. I'll go there and I will fast for 3 full days. That means 72 hours. And I'll stay there until God will do justice for me. I want nothing for, but only justice.
An important part of the story of how the prison ministry started was right here at this building at the Ministry of Justice.
And finally, I don't know how and who told her the address of the general residence or headquarters of the prisons. When she found the street, at that time I didn't know it existed such a thing. And she went to the door. A guard, an officer opened. Whom do you look for? Do you have a son in the prison? No, sir, I want to get the permission from the highest level for entering the prison from Brașov. Why? I want to work with the people. Lady, it's impossible. Go away. We have here rules. These are prisons, not hotels. Second time, she stood there. Are you still here? Yes, I want to talk to the general. Lady, the general is very busy. He's a high officer. He has big problems to solve, not to stay to work, to talk to you. Go away. She stepped down the steps and she stayed there up to evening. In the morning, it was the 7th day of fasting for Elena. And in the morning at 7 o'clock, she was already at the entrance of the big, huge building. At 8 o'clock, a nice, polished car pulled in the front and a high officer get out. It was the general. And Elena was there. She was sitting and praying. The general went by her, and while he stepped up, he asked the officer, which was on duty, who is this lady? Oh, she's a crazy lady. She wants to go as a civilian to work with the prisoners, but she's not home. And the general stopped. Let her come to me. Okay. They met in the door. Mr. General, please give me allowance to go into the prison because I have such a burden for those who are inmates. They have no carries, no love, nothing. They need some comfort, and I need to go too. Who are you? I'm Elena. I'm a nurse. Do you have a religion? Yes, I'm Seventh-day Adventist. Seventh-day Adventist. Okay, woman, go to your church and call somebody. Do you have a chief there? Call him to come and visit with me. I want to talk. And suddenly in the lobby of the union office, I saw a woman. They told me, somebody's looking for you. She was a humble looking lady. She seemed that she was staying there and praying. It touched my heart. I had some pity for her because she looked somehow depressed. And as she began to talk to me, I thought she was crazy. She was speaking me about going to the highest officer of the prison system, to the general, and that she was getting his acceptance to begin a work, a ministry in the prison. It was unbelievable because I was prosecuted by the communists, and I know what did this mean. It meant to go in the darkest place of all the world, where people go beyond the doors and sometimes never came back. And it was something like touching the death. Finally, she gave me address, she gave me everything, and now I was fasting and praying, asking the Lord to open a large, large door. In that morning, in the nicest suit and shirt I had, my heart was beating strong I was approaching the building of the Ministry of Justice. Nobody likes that building because there is a menace beyond the walls. I was met at the door, my documents were asked. I was waiting for 45 minutes in the lobby and I was alone there. Finally, I was led by a soldier to the office. I was put on a chair for 15 minutes and then, please, the general looks for you. I knew that I was somehow an ambassador, even if I was a pleadant, somebody who was pleading for God's justice. The general was serious, but soft. If I say this is a human face of the communism. But after I spoke to him, offering our people and our ministry, he was speaking soft, with a deep concern. He said, we, the prison system, since long I want that we should involve the civilians in working with the inmates. We need you because we cannot reform, we cannot reborn these people, and you are the link in rehabilitate these people with lost hope. Finally, the plans were done. But I was alone. I never saw how this work could be done. And by a non-expected chance, I met not a very tall man with mustaches in the lobby of the Union. He seemed to me like a stranger, and the Lord said, go and say, may I help you somehow? And this was the beginning of a huge, huge project, maybe one of the strongest experiences in my life.
Bună ziua! How much is this pot? Okay. Okay, and you could keep that one. It's a gift. When we returned back to America, we realized we had two problems. One is that we needed literature and Bible lessons for working inside the prisons, and we needed to work with some other organization that had experience in working inside the prisons. When I got back to America, I had already found out that there was this Romanian couple that had started translating booklets and tracts into the Romanian language. In fact, they had found out about Layman Ministries Bible lesson sets that we had already culturally adapted for use in communist countries, and they had started translating these Bible lesson sets. So together with Val and Valley Bircher, this Romanian couple, and Light Bearers Ministries, we sent over 3.8 million pieces of literature for the work here in the prisons and evangelism in Romania. And then later we had those Bible lesson sets printed. The next thing I did is I contacted Richard Bland from United Prison Ministries and asked him if he would be willing to team up with Layman Ministries to go to Romania to do training. We realized that, see, Layman Ministries has always been an organization that was dedicated to training and motivating lay people in practical ministry, where United Prison Ministries was a ministry that was working inside prisons doing Bible studies and such with prisoners. We realized that this would be a wonderful opportunity for our two ministries to merge together, to come to Romania and start training seminars for common lay people. A few weeks later, we got tickets, we flew together to Romania, we traveled the four corners of Romania going to churches, training lay people to start doing Bible studies and working with the inmates inside the prisons. And this was the beginning of humanitarian prison services work that started to spread all across Romania. 1993 was a very exciting time for Layman Ministries because it was that year that Layman Ministries, together with Lucian Cristescu and the Romanian Union, formed legally HPS, which is Humanitarian Prison Services, the prison ministry here in Romania. And that year we also started sponsoring a lay evangelist by the name of Nicu Butoi. Nicu Butoi was doing evangelism across Romania, and over the next several years, literally thousands of people were baptized in connection with Layman Ministries' sponsorship of these evangelistic campaigns. We also had the opportunity to go to the Republic of Moldova, a former part of the Soviet Union, and we had 100,000 Bible lesson sets printed for the prison ministry. That's over 3 million individual Bible lesson sets. Plus we printed that same year 100,000 little booklets called The Impending Conflict. It was in 1994 that HPS held its first prison convention, and we invited General Major Ion Kish as a special guest to attend this convention. At that time, we presented him with a special gift, the book Desire of Ages. Little did we know what was going to happen because of the presentation of this one gift. That next August, we invited General Kish to come to ASI in America. And while he was there, he had under his arm the book Desire of Ages, which we had given him as a gift. And he was telling Richard Bland and myself, he said, "This book is such a wonderful book. I read it 3 times. He said, "It portrays Christ in such a wonderful way." He said, "You know, I was thinking it would be nice to be able to give this book to all the inmates in Romania." And Richard and I were looking at each other like, okay. And he said, "Do you think you could print about 40,000 copies or 45,000 copies of this book to give to the inmates in Romania?" And we kind of went, "Sure, okay." And then he said, "You know, we have inmates coming and going in the prisons all the time. It'd be nice if we had extra copies in reserve for the new men that are constantly coming into the prisons. We can be giving this book to them." And he said, "You know, also all the members of the staff of the Ministry of Justice for working inside the prison, you know, the guards and the administrative people, they would be benefited by a copy of this book too. Could you print, 60,000 copies so we could give it to all the administrative staff?" And then he went on and thought to himself a little bit more, and he looked at us and he said, "You know, I'm friends with Iliescu, the president at that time." He said, "I'd like to give a nice hardbound copy of this book to the president of Romania and all the members of parliament and all the members of Ministry of Justice. Could you print 100,000 copies of this book?" And Richard and I decided that if the Holy Spirit could impress him to ask, the Holy Spirit could impress people to give. And over the next several months, as these books were coming off these former Communist Party presses, the books that were actually being printed on these presses were the books of Stalin and Lenin, now printing the Desire of Ages. As these books were coming off the press, people from all over the world were donating funds, and they were coming in, and every time we had a shipment of books, the exact amount of money was there to be able to pay for each one of those books as they came off a shipment. The idea of having the Desire of Ages printed and then distributed in the former communist prisons of Romania with the help of the government seemed like an impossibility. Our HPS workers, together with prison guards, went from cell to cell in the entire maximum, medium, and minimum security prisons all across the country. While at the juvenile facility in Craiova, General Kish, while both on national Romanian television and CNN, boldly stated to the inmates and prison administration, "We used to put people in prison for books like these. Now we are putting these books in prison." We will never forget the looks on the faces of some of these young men, and in their hands was a book that could forever change their lives. The entire faculty in every prison received a free copy of the book Desire of Ages, as well as the lifers in the maximum security prison in Craiova. In Focșani, the commander received us with open arms for distributing the book The Great Controversy. This Orthodox priest shows off all the books distributed in his prison while holding The Great Controversy in his arms. Today, Layman Ministries continues to support the work of HPS. They now have around 1,000 volunteers working in all the 44 prisons of Romania. While I was in Romania this trip, Meet, Layman Ministries sponsored director of HPS, and I were going to go and visit a few of the prisons to see what HPS is doing today. This morning we're heading over to the women's facility at Tigorosor. It's just outside of Ploiești, north of Bucharest. It's north of Bucharest, right? Yeah. And we're outside the women's prison here, and we're going to be able to go in and talk a little bit with some of the female prisoners. Today isn't Sabbath, but they have allowed us to gather a small group of the girls together and have a meeting with them. HPS workers such as Eugen Mindeanu teaches inmates how to study the Bible and how to have a relationship with Jesus Christ.
And I can find words to thank you for all your ministry and what you have done for me and with me. A year ago I received a Bible from you, and this Bible changed my life.
Our next stop was here at the maximum security prison in Bacău, way up by the Moldavian border. Inside the security area, they have some HPS workers actually walking around with some of the inmates in here. These visits are just a small sample of the work of HPS all across Romania. From what I understand, they do two different types of meetings here in this prison. This is a typical, like a Sabbath service, like here where it's like preaching, it's more like a formal church, but a lot of times what they're doing is they make a circle and they have interaction, Bible studies. And what I've been told here in this prison in Iași, that the inmates are leading out in a lot of the services, not only the Bible services, Sabbath school studies, but even some of the preaching here. But the neat thing is that it's still the principle of teach to teach, that the inmates are working one-on-one with each other, group discussions, interactions. The commander of the prison here, general director is what they call him now, was saying that out of all the different groups that come into the prison, this has been the most successful program he's seen so far working inside this prison facility.